About an hour ago, Emmanuel Macron made a roughly 14-minute speech from the Elysée Palace in Paris, which signalled a change in attitude towards defence, not just in France, but Macron calling for the same across Europe. He wants Europe to unite, to get behind Ukraine in its existential fight against Russia's invasion. Emmanuel Macron unveiled a plan to increase French defence spending by 20 billion euros over the next 5 years. This, he says, will be a private-public partnership to, he says, avoid any tax increases on French citizens in order to fund that. He says it's essential that Europe unites to secure future peace, future security. He said Russia is now the enemy and cannot be trusted. He cited Vladimir Putin specifically on this issue. He cited the fact that Russia has twice broken treaties, namely the Minsk treaties over the issues in Ukraine, 2014, 2015, and he says that basically it is impossible to take Vladimir Putin at his word. He says Russia will be boosting its defenses, its army, its weaponry as it goes along. He said Russia has made this a world conflict by bringing in Iran and North Korea and, to an extent, China in terms of the use of arms on the ground. And he said that Europe has the duty now to work together to create more security and to lend its support to Ukraine. Let's take a listen to the French president.
La Russie As I speak to you and for the foreseeable, Russia has become a threat to France and Europe. I deeply regret this, and I'm convinced that in the long term, peace will return to our continent with Russia once again at peace. But this is the situation I'm describing to you, and we have to live with it. Faced with this dangerous world, it would be foolish to remain a spectator. Without further delay, we must make decisions for Ukraine, for the security of the French, for the security of Europeans.
So security, the big issue that Emmanuel Macron was at pains to outline there. Basically, the increase of spending, 20 billion euros extra from now until 2030, is his way, he says, of reindustrializing certain parts of France. So that is something from the social aspect to look at in terms of increasing jobs, which is almost a welcome issue in many parts of the country, but on a broader scale and a pan-European scale, it's a question of creating a platform from which the continent can defend itself and, at this point in time, lend its support to Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine's fight against Vladimir Putin and Russia. James Andre has been observing matters for us. He joins us now live from the Elysée Palace. James, President Macron here, in many ways, opening the door to a different kind of future in terms of defence for France and Europe.
Yes, absolutely. Emmanuel Macron, who really wanted to offer something very didactic today and to try and convince the French people that indeed they needed to shift gears, that basically the recipes of the past could not apply to what is happening now across Europe. Emmanuel Macron, that we've been seeing over the past few days in a flurry of diplomatic activity. We saw him indeed last Sunday. He was in London on the 24th of February. He was in Washington, basically showing support for Volodymyr Zelensky, and this is the message he really clearly hammered to the French public. You know, we must back Volodymyr Zelensky. He said we need to back Ukraine in order to achieve sustainable, solid peace, to protect Ukraine, but also to protect Europe, and also explaining to the French public that yes, there will be more military spending, that obviously he does not want to hike taxes, but what he wants to do, he says, is to redistribute the spending of the nation, which he says means there will be sacrifices, there will be tough choices to make, but also calling upon the French public to mobilize, to get ready, and indeed to get ready to defend France and its values in the face of what has become, as he put it, you know, a renewed threat coming from the East. Emmanuel Macron saying that indeed tomorrow at this European summit, it will really be the kickstarting of a European defence, that rules would be changed inside the Union in order to allow countries to have deficit if that money is spent on defence, but also, you know, creating financial mechanisms, reindustrializing France, basically recreating a whole economy of the defence that needs to be sovereign and that needs to be integrated here in France.
Indeed, Macron says also he will open debate about extending the French nuclear umbrella to EU partner nations. James, bear with us a second because, as you've been observing, at the Elysée, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has arrived for a special pre-summit supper with the French president. Now, this very high honour indeed being paid to Viktor Orban. His visit comes as US President Trump has ordered the suspension of US military aid deliveries to Kyiv and a halt in intelligence sharing, which is a real blow to Ukraine's troops in trying to fend off that Russian invasion. The feeling in many European capitals is that Trump's America is pivoting away from its allies toward Moscow. Orban, of course, one of Trump's and Moscow's closest allies in the European Union, said a transatlantic rift over Russia's invasion of Ukraine became apparent over recent days. I think that's an understatement, isn't it? Macron has hatched a four-point plan, of course, to end the Ukraine war, but the main beneficiary from US actions over the past week is clearly Russia and Vladimir Putin. Let's go back to James Andre, who is observing matters for us at the Elysée. James, Viktor Orban then and Emmanuel Macron, I imagine that this will be a supper that involves a lot of talking as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we saw Viktor Orban arrive just earlier on here and be greeted by Emmanuel Macron here with the full Republican Guard. This is a state dinner, and this is obviously an honour that's being paid to Viktor Orban with a lot of things to discuss. As you know, Viktor Orban, this was just last week when the European Union decided to renew sanctions on Russia, threatened to use its veto power in order to avoid that happening. Viktor Orban has been quite clear about the fact that he is ready to use his position in the European Union to block the building, or at least to slow down the creation of this European defence. And this, of course, is something that Emmanuel Macron needs to sit down and discuss with the Hungarian president. This is the point of this dinner, to get him on board, probably to try and convince him that he has more to win by staying allied to the European Union rather than pivoting towards Russia. Well, he's already an ally of Russia, but basically finding himself in this American-Russia camp. So we'll see how he responds to this. This is also, of course, to prepare tomorrow's special summit, the European Union summit, where these first bricks of this renewed European defence need to be laid. And, of course, the idea is to avoid Viktor Orban impeding that progress.
James Andre at the Elysée Palace in Paris, the official residence of Emmanuel Macron, French president. James, thank you, as always, very much indeed.